Committee meeting. Today is the 21st of April, 4 o'clock. Those present are. Start at the top with Vicky.
Vicky Hoppy,
Jim
Mark
Lucas.
Lippert. Mark Pietmeyer.
Sue Knight,
Rob Tankersley.
Scott McKeon.
Do we get you, Casey?
Casey Lippert.
Okay, we're all there.
Mike Wilson.
Mike? All right. Jim, do you want to take the agenda on order or anything special out of order?
No, in order is fine, but we do have one discussion item with Chief Mouse at the end of the first two items. So the first item was the debt issue, and Scott's here to talk about that.
Yeah, thanks. This is our annual note rollover. We've been doing one every year for many years, but there's a couple of important things to point out in this one. The ordinance provides for a minimum pay down. We budgeted to pay down about $250,000 on the convention center portion, which is about $1.1 million right now from last year. And then we set aside, we haven't appropriated yet, but we set aside to pay down $2.5 million and change on the police station side. Now for liquidity purposes, we have kind of, we put in there the minimum pay down. We can dial that in as late as the day we're pricing it, which is right now we're penciled in to price this on June the 10th. So I think outside of this meeting, we might have a finance committee meeting to kind of decide if that's how we want to proceed. And we could go from there. If we do decide to pay more down on the police portion, which is currently at $5 million, if we want to pay down on that, we'll need to add some appropriations here on some legislation down between now and then. But we hold the cards deciding what we pay down. Things are still doing okay budget wise, but holding on to fund balance to make sure that things get better, not worse, has a lot of value to it. Liquidity becomes more important than fund balance, and cash is king if things would happen to deteriorate further. There's also several, if you really get down into reading it, there's several options, additional options to sell. But traditionally, these things always just simply go, we're going to go out to the market with an underwriter and we're going to sell the debt. Two things in this one that are a little bit unique are the option for private placement with a bank. The note market and the municipal bond market in the last 2 months has taken several liquidity hits as far as being able to sell and transaction, no buyers. A lot of that stuff that was out there in the middle of March when this all started, when everybody went home, there was a real credit crisis and nobody bought anything. So they had to pull out of the market for a week or two, look at other options. Some ended up privately placing with a bank. If you don't have this in the legislation, that's kind of you have to go back to the well to do that. Other ones kind of waited for the market to free back up and they sold. If they really had to sell, some of them ended up having to kind of pay a little bit of a interest premium to get those bought up at the time. So this is kind of an option that we'll have already built in, that if we, for whatever reason, things would sort of deteriorate again, or there's no buyers in the market, we'll be able to go place this in the bank. This one's important to have options because we do kind of have a ticking deadline of late June when the 2019 note is due for repayment. So we want to find a way to roll this over. The other option is there's an OMAP, that's Ohio Marketplace Access Program. It's a Treasurer of State program. It was really kind of rolled out a year ago for kind of credit enhancement for smaller governments or those with credit problems. But with everything that's going on, there's a lot of users. They're kind of also tagging that in there and applying for that. It also guarantees that there's a buyer for this issuance, and there's some provisions in there where they would buy when we would roll over next year if there would be some circumstances where we would have problems selling a note. There's provisions in there where we would place it with the Treasurer of State through the program. So kind of yet another option we have as far as getting the debt bought up. Andy felt it was important to kind of have all those cards on the table. Any questions about that? Yeah.
This might be a more general question than the specific issue with the bond, but you said that budget wise, we're still doing okay. Can you say how that is? If like, I think our expenses are relatively flat, but our income's got to be down with Ford without us getting the earning tax from Ford. How is it that we're still doing okay? I guess is kind of what I'm wondering.
A couple of things. The March data, which we will probably be distributing there with the council meeting next week. The March data was still all in arrears. So it was still all great data. We had the best March we've ever had, which actually capped off the best January, the best February we had ever had. So we were going off memory, I think about 6% ahead of last year, which was well ahead of where we had ever been before. Our forecast tools, it kind of it makes me want to cry to think about them, but our forecast tool actually pegged out at $30.7 million at the end of March. And last year we finished at 29.4, which was kind of in the stratosphere from the past. So we were doing rather well. April data, usually by about the 16th of the month, we have about 95% of the receipts. And I believe, I'm going off of memory here as well, but I believe we're possibly about 10% down on withholdings. We were also down in some net profit and some individuals, but a lot of that individual revenue will come in the next 3 months since the due date got pushed back. But withholdings were still reasonable. Now, a lot of the withholding money is still a month in arrears, so we're really receiving March money now in April. So things will kind of, so we need to be cautiously optimistic. It's really awesome that we have a decent April that came in, and we're still in a decent place here if we wind April down. But there's a real possibility that May and June is going to really start to see a drop off.
So what I'm interpreting what you're saying is that we want to pass this legislation now, but we want to decide what to do as far as liquidity based on, if we're going to spend more money based on waiting and seeing what happens with our May earnings tax, which won't hit us until June, but we need to have this passed in order for the bond to be paid, the note to be paid. Is that a fair way?
Yeah. And I would go ahead and I'm kind of recommending, my recommendation is that we have a $6.1 million note out there from last year. We're only required to pay down about $100,000, and that number's rounded up. On the convention center piece, because it's been in the market for several years, we have to make a principal pay down on that one. The police portion, we don't have to make any pay down. For liquidity purposes, rolling forward, and it's not necessarily something we'll know in May and June, but it's the unknown of what could happen this fall if things would actually take a resurgence in the next year, which is unfortunately a real possibility. So holding on to liquidity is kind of my recommendation. There's some happy meet in the middle points. If we want to have that conversation kind of in a finance setting, we could, pay down half of that or $1 million towards principal and still kind of retain onto a significant amount of cash in hand. But it's important, I think, for the legislation purpose that we have those options.
So the other aspect of the legislation that I was having a hard time understanding, because I'm not a finance guy, as far as the municipal securities market versus the private finance market, our best option is to go with municipal securities, but that might not be an option based on the way the market is currently. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
In those that last week and a half, 2 weeks of March, the municipal market basically froze. There was no buyers. There was so much cash going out of the market on secondary securities that were already out there that there were no buyers of new securities. So the market really froze for a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then it wasn't real great after that. So there's real possibilities that that could reoccur really quickly. So that's why we wanted to have those options.
That answers my questions. Thanks, Scott.
I have two questions, Scott, if you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
First thing, I'd agree completely with you, cash is king right now. And you always go into this discussion, do we want to pay debt reduction or keep the funds available? And at this juncture, with the future very uncertain, I like cash is king along with what you're saying. The second option is when the state is kind of, and just looking off from a perspective, kind of, I don't know what you'd call co-signing with us on that last state option. What obligations have we made or do we incur with the state for this benefit, if any?
I don't know the details to that. What the strings attached to that are. I know there's some fees if we elect to do it. But I can work on kind of summarizing and get that out to you guys as far as any strings attached.
I would really appreciate that because, generally speaking, if you're going to co-sign something, you really kind of want to know what the obligations are, but I would much appreciate it. Thank you, Scott.
Right. It's possible that it really is nothing. There is no strings attached, and they really just do it to help, liquidity of the local governments. But I want to verify that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm good, Paul.
Okay, Mike, are you okay with everything? I didn't hear Mike. I guess he's okay.
I think he's muted. Yeah.
Okay, well, we got the majority,
Yeah.
so we're all right. All right, next item, Jim.
Mike's giving the thumbs up.
Okay, we're good. Oh, okay. All right, Mike, I didn't see you. All right, thank you.
And this is an emergency too, so make sure everybody's comfortable with that too. So
I am.
the second item is ODOT related as it pertains to guardrails in the city, and Joe's here to talk about that.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
We
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, good. So, a few weeks ago, I received an email from ODOT, and basically what ODOT has done over the last year or so, a couple of years maybe, is replacing all their current guardrail, which they consider to be not necessarily outdated, but just not as safe as it could be. So they've replaced guardrails that they own with this new type of guardrail. The old guardrail is sort of like the ends of the guardrail that curve down into the ground. If somebody hits those, it creates a rolling effect of the car. And they feel that's unsafe, so they're replacing that with a different type of guardrail that is more upright. And if a car should hit it, there's cushion in there. I mean, obviously it'll do damage to the car, but they feel like it's safer and it saves lives. So evidently the state has a lot of safety money. So they want to replace all guardrail in Sharonville that belongs to Sharonville with the same thing. They pay for it all. It costs us nothing. But because it belongs to us and not them, they need legislation for approval to do this. So that's what the legislation is all about. So we'll get new guardrail in 10 locations throughout the city, and ODOT pays for it.
Hey, Joe, I got a question regarding damaged guardrails. Does ODOT normally fix those in the city?
No, we do. If they belong to us, we do.
Okay, so will it be the same way that if there's a guardrail damage, that ODOT will do the repair instead of us then?
No, we would have, once they replace the old guardrail with what they consider a safer new guardrail, we have to maintain it after that.
Okay.
No
Thank
different
you.
than what it is now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. This legislation is strictly to allow ODOT to replace guardrail in 10 locations with a newer, safer guardrail. And they're paying for everything.
Casey and Mike, you okay with that?
No, I was good at they're paying for everything.
That's when I stopped too, Mike and Casey.
Well, that was an easy
I-
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it,
was,
it
I
it
was
is
just
really
wondering,
pretty
is that,
easy.
is that
And
just happening? Sorry,
I'm sorry.
can you guys hear me? I was just wondering if that's going to be all over the nation, or if Ohio is just the only state
Well, I
doing
don't know
that?
about the
Do you have any
nation,
idea?
but yeah, this is Ohio Department of Transportation. So
Right,
I'm assuming, yes, they're doing it all over the state, but I don't know the answer to that. I just know
Okay.
that they
Now,
came
just
to
curious.
us. Yeah,
I
they
was just
came to
curious.
us, Sheriff. I suspect that, yes, they are doing it everywhere. And they would, again, they have to get permission because they don't own the guardrail.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm good.
And by the way, it is a resolution to be passed by emergency just because, they asked for that. I didn't particularly ask for that. They did. Just because they have to get so many municipalities lined up. They need to get it done within a certain period of time. So it is by emergency.
Okay with that, Paul?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Joe, do we have a list of where all the locations are?
I do have a list, but they didn't give me locations like what we do, like, at this, they gave me, aerial readings, like numbers and stuff. And I can, once we get back to normal, I could probably research some of those things to get exact locations. But no, I do not have the exact locations right now.
No, I don't think it's needed. I was just asking if
Yeah.
it would have
I
been
do
needed.
know it's 10 locations. I do know that.
Everybody good with this?
I'm fine.
Yes,
Mike.
good.
Great.
We're all set.
The last item that's an add-on is a discussion item with Kirk. Kirk, Noah, and I have had detailed conversations on this issue. And then we also talked with Kevin, and we all support it. But I'll let Kirk talk about what his request is.
Sure. So what we're looking to try and obtain is an ATF accelerant canine dog. So some people will call that an arson investigation dog. It's for fire investigations, and basically, whereas the police canines smell drugs, Lieutenant Ellis would be the handler, and training and everything is provided by the ATF. So it's a federal dog. Our only responsibility is the care of the dog, making sure it has adequate facilities, a vehicle, place at the station to be when he is there, and obviously the care. So the majority of that has actually been sourced already. We believe we even have someone to pay for the $5,000 it would take to outfit the vehicle. We're going to use the old F-150 that Chief Hammonds had, and just re-outfit that as the canine vehicle. So we're not out of anything really out of pocket. Lieutenant Ellis is going to handle the vet bills and the feeding of the dog and all that. Basically, what we're looking for is your support in this, that we let this go on and it be an active member in the community and for the region, and support his handling of this dog and in the fire investigations in the area.
Kirk, you have an estimate. A lot of times, the concern is financial. I know you have an estimate for how much this may cost on an annual basis above what your current operations are. And
Sure. He's very active in the Hamilton County Fire Investigation Unit already. So we do pay for them to make these call outs to the regions to do these arson investigations. So really annually, I think it's probably going to cost the city about $1,000 more in overtime than what we already are. So it's a very nominal amount overall.
Chief, do you have an idea of whether or not any other jurisdictions have the accelerant sniffing dog? Would we be one of the only ones in our area?
So yeah, this is kind of would be a feather in the cap for Sharonville, in that there are no ATF dogs in the region. The closest one is actually in Toledo. There are other accelerant dogs. The majority of those are with the state fire marshal's office. I think they have 3 or 4 of them for the state. And they only come out on very specific things, and it has to be a fatality and some other items that, you know, we would not have the same issues, the same restrictions. The other dog that is in the area is in Middletown, but it's only available on an extremely limited basis, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So this would be for basically Hamilton County, Sharonville Fire Department, and would probably be present on a 38 to 40 investigations a year.
So to what extent, I'm not familiar with the day-to-day operations, like what Lieutenant Ellis does day-to-day.
Mhm.
Would this shift what he does day-to-day? Would this take him away from being in a certain rotation, and he would be now committed to this investigatory role? Or
It would not at all. He would still come to work, still do all his regular lieutenant job. And basically he'd be, if he was at work, he's subject to the call out parameters and the policies that we have as far as responding, which he is right now. Those are not going to change just because he has a dog. The only thing that would be different is if the ATF has an actual call out, and there hasn't been one in the past 3 years in this region. They would really strongly suggest that he show up, but it's one of those things, if he can't, he can't. But otherwise, his day-to-day operations would remain the same. It's just that the dog would be around.
So when you say ATF call out, to me, that makes me think like a bomb sniffing dog. Is this dog limited to accelerants like arson accelerants, gasoline?
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
bomb.
Yep.
Okay.
It is not a bomb dog, no.
All right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Mark, I just had a question, making sure what the legislation is asking to do. So it's to acquire
Hey,
from.
Mark.
Yeah,
Mark, right now, it's just a discussion item.
okay, we're not actually to that point.
No, we need to work out a memorandum of understanding with the union regarding some other issues. And that would come back in front of law committee and then ultimately to council. But we wanted to do a discussion right now before you actually had a MOU in front of you, just
Okay.
because it's unique and we've never talked about it before. We thought the discussion would be better to have you guys ask questions, start thinking about it, that type of thing. We didn't want to have legislation in front of you right now versus a discussion. I mean, we could work on the MOU as quickly as we can and perhaps have that ready for council, but there's no reason why we can't bring the MOU back to you at another meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Hey, Chief, what would be the region area as far as how far his travels would take him?
So generally, they have to be associated with a team. So that would be Hamilton County. So for the majority of the items, unless it was a really special case, like an ATF call out, it would be in Hamilton County.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Kirk, you're
Just a
fine.
I'm sorry,
I'm
go ahead. I just, was this because of the lieutenant's efforts that we were designated for this opportunity?
So he is a very special as far as a fire investigator goes. He's in the top 1% of qualifications in the world. So that alone is pretty remarkable. The other thing is he is also not only a certified fire investigator, he is also a certified peace officer. So you have to have both of those certifications to begin to be eligible for this program.
Thank you.
I think it sounds pretty cool, Paul. I'm good.
Yeah, I like it. Mike, are you okay with it?
Okay, I think I'm on now. But yes, I'm good with it. Absolutely.
I think it's quite an honor. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, kudos to Ellis on that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting ready to go to Australia again, hopefully in the fall. So yeah, he is a bit of a rock star, to be honest.
Yeah.
Kirk, do you think we can get the MOU ready for the next law committee meeting, or do you think it'll take longer?
I kind of think we can. The draft that I saw from Noah today looks pretty good to me. Again, I think the union will be I don't mean to be a stumbling block, but I think they would be the slow part of that process. But I don't see why not, actually.
Okay. So probably see that in front of you guys in a couple weeks here. So
Any other items to be discussed or reviewed?
not by us, unless you guys have something.
If none, could I have a motion to adjourn? Made by Casey,
Second.
second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Have a
Care.
good day.